Let's start. As the title of our presentation was introduced, the focus of this talk is Ukrainian political crisis in 2014, when the incumbent Ukrainian President Yanukovych turned down a proposal to sign a political association and free trade agreement with the European Union. And this refusal marked closer political and economic ties with Russia. And as a result, the anti-government protests known as the Euromaidan erupted in Kiev, leading to the revolution and the overthrow of the president. On the one hand, establishing closer relations with the West, and on the other hand, Russian military intervention and Crimean annexation. Why? Why Lithuania and Ukraine, two distant countries, not bordering countries, but the events in Ukraine received worldwide media coverage, including Lithuanian media. And it seems that historically, Lithuania and Ukraine have always been on good terms and supported each other. The reason for this might be the shared historical past dating to the Middle Ages. And when Lithuania, Belarus, and Ukraine formed the Lithuanian-Ruthenian state, and they now have a common cultural reach. The 20th century is marked by the shared painful Soviet past, which is a significant factor helping to emphasize with each other. After Lithuania joined the European Union and the NATO in 2004, it became a major supporter of Ukraine in establishing and maintaining closer relations with the EU. That's why our aim was to identify how Ukraine is constructed in Lithuanian media through a specific type of metaphor, personification of the countries and regions. To explore rhetorical implications of a systemic metaphor usage, mainly predicative, conveying attitudes, and empathetic, triggering emotions, those functions are in the focus of the research. Also, we have to say that we focus on the aspect of verbal and non-verbal communication between animated or personified countries, regions such as Russia, Ukraine, and the EU, Lithuania including. Now, our theoretical underpinnings, we apply critical discourse analysis methods, Musolff, Hart, other authors, and critical metaphor analysis, in particular, Charteris-Black and his functions of metaphors. Here, metaphor we see as a cognitive mechanism performing a number of rhetorical functions in political discourse. From cognitive perspective, we speak about it as a coherent system of structuring our experience, and from rhetorical perspective, we view it as an argumentative tool aimed at communicating attitudes, arousing emotions, and persuading the audience. Now, also we use the scenario-oriented approach suggested by Musolff, and he sees this approach as discourse-based and cultural and historically mediated version of a source domain. So that's why I introduced historical context of this conflict. And less schematic subtype of frame, narrative and evaluative perspectives come into focus as well. Now, and definitely it has power to frame its discourses. Speaking about functions of metaphor or purposes of metaphor, Charteris-Black introduced, there are different functions. They are presented by different scholars differently. But if we take Charteris-Black approach, we focus mostly on predicative function evaluation, positive and negative evaluations. Also, we speak about personification, which is referring to something that is inanimate, using a word or phrase that in other contexts refers to something that is animate. The complexity of the problem about differentiating between personifications as metaphors and metonymies is illustrated by different scholars and experimental study by Letty Dorst, and in which she demonstrated that there's no marked difference between the interpretation of cases personification and metonymies. And also this position is also advocated by Musolff, who disagrees that personifications are just shortcuts to more information. We have to take into consideration just they are not just to name or identify something, but uncover how such persons manifest and how they to show their specific character, social identity, and how they behave in particular situations. So this is our theoretical background. And now Inesa will continue with the procedure of our research and the findings. And then I will finalize. Inesa?
Thank you, Jurga. Let me move on from this point. I hope you can hear me. So the procedure consists of 3 parts. We had to go through 3 stages. The first one is the identification level, for which we use the Ankang program to identify keywords, or rather a list of words and notional words that are the most frequent in the corpus, collocations with those keywords, and then we also apply the metaphor identification procedure, at least some of those stages, some of those steps. Then the second stage is metaphor interpretation, when we try to identify cases of personification. And finally, we had to identify the evaluative load of those cases, for which we applied, as Jurga already mentioned, scenario-oriented approach advocated by Musolff, and attitudinal perspective, well, discussed by Charteris-Black. Jurga, could you go to next slide, please? Thank you.
Slide. Okay.
Yeah. Could you click once again? Yeah, thank you. So the corpus it was compiled based on the topic, the Ukrainian crisis. These were were opinion articles and commentaries from the 4 most important news portals in Lithuania, and you can see them here in this table. You can see the word count here. So the total, the corpus is slightly over 100,000 words and consists of 125 articles. Yeah, next slide. Thank you. So the keywords, or the most frequent notional words, were related definitely to the topic discussed in those papers, which is kind of natural. So you have 4 bubbles here. So one is vocabulary or keywords related to Ukraine. You have Ukraine, Kiev, and Maidan. These were the keywords. Then the red bubble, where you have Russia, Moscow, and Kremlin, most frequent words. Then you have Europe, EU, and the West, and then Lithuania and Vilnius. So here you can see that Lithuania and Europe sort of belong together, but actually this is, they are so thematically close in a discourse that we decided to put them into one. Thank you. Could you move on? Thank you. So have a look at these results here. When we calculated the well, Ukraine, Europe, Russia, and Lithuania related words, so they are distributed. They can be seen on pie chart on the left, you can see that Ukraine-related words were the most frequent. Again, it's kind of expected, not unexpected. So of all cases, of all mentions, personification constituted slightly more than 1/3. And here are a couple of examples of personification. The West is tired of waiting for reforms in Ukraine. The West requires that reforms were made. Okay, yeah, thank you. Another slide where you have the calculations of all mentions of Ukraine. 25% were cases of personification, and you can see the same, the tendencies and the other pie charts here. Russia probably was the most frequently personified word or words, because there were 3 of them. Okay, thank you. Now the second stage and the procedure is the metaphor explanation, and we identified now a corpus for scenarios: mental activities, communication, behavior, and then physical body and character traits, and then they were split further, as you can see. However, we decided to focus on one of them, and this is communication, which was basically concerned with verbal communication, and then the other type of communication was about relationships. Thank you. Next. Okay, so the scenario of verbal communication. Here you can see all those participants or contextual clues of this scenario. You can see that Ukraine or Maidan or Kiev says, asks, negotiates, claims, has its voice, has its stories to tell, and so on. You can see all those words on the screen. Russia suggests to the West, requires, shouts, reproaches, and so on. Europe suggests, gives advice, promises, condemns sometimes. Lithuania thanks, claims support, advises. Lithuania is Ukraine's voice, speaks boldly in Europe, requires sanctions for Russia, and the like. Here are the examples. So you can see that the Kremlin, in the first case, after the sanctions are revoked, the Kremlin could shout at its subordinates about a crushing and decisive victory against the West in Ukraine. The West is tired of waiting for reforms in Ukraine. The West requires that they be made. Western states first greet and support revolutions, but after confronting Russia, they start retreating. Ukraine could thank Russia for sheltering Crimea. Here you can see a case of irony. Kiev strictly refuses to sit down with separatist leaders at the negotiation table and talk. Lithuania acts as the voice of Ukraine in Europe and the NATO. Lithuania is among those few who speak boldly about the Kremlin's aggression. Okay, next slide. Thank you. So the third stage of our procedure was concerned with attitudes and evaluation. Here you can see the 4 bubbles with some evaluative words in them. So Ukraine is seen basically as a fighter, and you can see that it takes an active stance, proudly defends its independence. You can also identify elements of self-pity and seeking support. It tries to justify itself, seeks European and Lithuanian support. However, if in general, you can see that it's evaluated positively. Russia is mostly seen as an aggressor. It takes an active stance, demonstrates verbal aggression, its rigid and unrelenting position. In many cases, it cheats and tries to dictate, accuses European Union and Ukraine, and mainly is evaluated negatively. Europe is seen as a protector, is taking mostly active stance, but also sometimes passive. It is authoritative, giving advice, requiring something to be done, is kind of superior to Ukraine. Lithuania is more like a mediator between Ukraine and Europe. It boldly speaks in support of Ukraine, requires sanctions for Russia, mostly positively evaluated. Next slide. So when it comes to the other type of relationships, you have several scenarios. One is concerned with help and benefactor. So
can you quickly wrap up everything in 30 minutes, 10 seconds, sorry.
Okay, so I'll go through very, very fast. So help and benefactor, you can see those words here. Jurga, could you move on? Thank you. Another scenario here is concerned with togetherness, a relationship, partnership, getting closer, or being together with someone. Next slide. Thank you. One scenario is kind of interesting because it involves only, well, two participants, Ukraine and Europe. Here we can speak about lack of communication. Well, the contextual clues are like this. Next slide. Another scenario involves Ukraine and Russia, and here you can see mostly negative aspects of communication like tension, argument, treat Ukraine as second-rate, provoking, kind of things like that. Okay, so the attitudes and the valuation here, you can see again that Ukraine is more seen as a benefactor, Russia as a complicator, Europe as a supporter, and Lithuania as mediator and supporter. Next slide for some contextualized examples. Okay.
Just omitting them, sorry,
okay.
for the time lag. Just to conclude, yes, Ukraine, Russia, Lithuania, and Europe are metaphorically perceived as human beings, and they are characterized in the terms that we have just described. On the one hand, Ukraine is presented as a fighter for its freedom, a staunch defender of its values, but sometimes it is not devoid of some human features such as hesitation. On the other hand, Ukraine is seen as adopting passive stance, accepting help from Europe and Lithuania. Russia is seen as an aggressor, condemned, ironized, despised, very negative. And Europe is an authority, defender of those in need, patron. Also sometimes weak and unable to understand Ukraine's needs, unable to resist. So that's it. Thank you very much for your attention.